the dragons, they're so loving and it's a different kind of love. I mean, every guide has a different signature, right? And I sense the dragon energy as different than the angels. It's unconditional love, but it's different. Dragon energy is so big, but I've seen many people like move to tears, and I have as well when they connect with their dragons, especially their guardian dragons. And, people are moved, and I've had students or clients ask me like, how are you not crying while this is happening, because they're like bawling, and I'm like, I know, I've been there, I still feel that. They're such wonderful allies, and they're really truly integral to our ascension path.
Welcome to the Space Holders Medicine Podcast. We're your hosts, Malvina and Stephanie. This podcast is a sanctuary for space holders to delve into the unique medicine they offer. Each episode will explore their personal journeys, diverse modalities, and the profound experiences that inspire and shape their work. Join us as we uncover the transformative power of their craft. Enjoy! Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Space Holders Medicine Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Stephanie, and we have the amazing Carla Macapinlac as our guest for this episode. Carla is a quantum energy and sound healer, Reiki Master Teacher, psychic reader, and the founder of Ascension Wisdom Institute, with a healing studio based in Oakland, California. So her work blends metaphysical insight with grounded guidance to support transformational healing and spiritual growth. Carla's intuitive path began in early childhood with experiences of clairvoyance and deepened through the years of dedicated study and practice. After a long career in healthcare compliance, she left the corporate world in 2019 to pursue her soul's calling and published her first book. She is the author of Vade Mecum, an always present guide to your divine path, and shares reflections through her newsletter, Mindful Morsels, on Substack, along with essays and poetry on Medium. Through her signature programs in the Dragon Mystery School and Consciousness Expansion School, Carla guides seekers through multidimensional journeys to reconnect with their intuitive gifts and embody their highest potential. Known for her grounded clarity, humility, and attunement to subtle frequencies, Carla helps others bridge dimensions and align with the deeper wisdom of the soul. Her teaching approach is both mystical and practical, rooted in presence, integrity, and deep devotion to the unfolding path of consciousness. Hey, welcome, Carla.
Thank you, Malvina. It's so good to be here. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you and like to just dive deep in your journey and your work. So to start off, would you be able to take us back to how it all began? Like, how did your childhood clairvoyant experiences shape your journey into energy healing and intuitive work?
I'd love to. It's interesting because I didn't really realize this until later on when I had readings, and I was told in an Akashic reading that I came to this incarnation awake. And that sort of put some puzzle pieces together for me, because my earliest memory of clairvoyance was way back to, I would say, I remember it was before I started going to formal, school. So I would say about between 3 and 5 years old. I was exposed to death really early in my life. Both my paternal and maternal grandparents passed away when I was really young, 1, 2, 3 years old. And I think because, and I grew up in the Philippines, so I was born and raised there. So they never shielded us from death. So I remember going to the wake. We would be with so many family members overnight. So I guess at that young age, I started asking all these questions and wondering about death. And I started down this path of questioning, well, what happens when we die? Or what happened to my grandparents? They passed away, they died. Where did they go? Did they just disappear? And then I started thinking, well, what if my parents pass away? Where did they go? And then I said, well, what if I weren't here? What if I didn't, what if I was never born? where would I be? And whenever I went down that path of like questioning, I always felt that I was so close to an answer, and I would find myself in what I now know as the void. But back then, it was just this space of emptiness, like all black. And every time that would show up as I was questioning, I always felt like I was going down this deep hole, but it also felt that the answers were right there, like right in front of me and just out of my grasp. And it truly felt like I was so close to an answer. But as soon as I would try to reach it, it would slip away. And in fact, I started trying to every time this happened, I would like try to think really fast because it was almost as if I was chasing the answers that way. But it became so frustrating because I would hit this wall, and then I'd have to like bring myself back, crawl out of that void without the answers. So this happened. This was a repeated experience at that young age, and I didn't think about it until I was older, but I realized that I think the reason it was such like this paradox in my mind, it was such a conundrum, I guess, if you will, whenever I thought about that, is because deep down I knew that it was not possible to not exist. So contemplating, well, if my parents died, where would they go? And I couldn't even contemplate not existing myself because I think deep down my soul knew we don't disappear, we don't die, we're eternal. So that was that feeling. And I know it sounds kind of strange to be thinking about that so young, but this was a almost like a loop that kept happening to me. So that was my earliest memory of clairvoyance. And then later on, I had, I've always had a very active dream life. So I would have many dreams, some of them also centered around the topic of death. Of course, back then I didn't realize why. Now I'm starting to see why. But I had recurring dreams, but I also would have these, a very impactful kind of like theme or series of dreams that I had was around our dogs. We had many pet dogs in our family. At one point, we had 10 at the same time. I know it sounds like a lot. But I would have a dream about one of our dogs dying, and then the very next day, that dog would pass away. And it didn't really matter if the dog was old or young, whether it was healthy or sick. It happened almost like clockwork. I can't remember exactly how many times this happened. In one of those instances, that dog, I guess she ran away from our home in our yard or whatever, and was struck by a car. And I remember when we found her, we tried to revive her, but she passed away. And I think that was the most scary experience to me because I actually witnessed that dog passing away. And that wasn't the first time it had happened. I would say maybe that was around the fourth or fifth time. And so that really scared me because at that age, I think I was around 11 or so at that time, but I thought I was causing them to die by dreaming about them. I mean, you don't know, right? When you're little. So I tried to block that part of me, and the dream stopped happening. And then I've had, other experiences since then, but really didn't seriously start exploring them and examining them and trying to understand what these meant, these experiences, until probably in my 20s.
Thank you so much, Carla. That was so enlightening, and I can completely relate to that experience of dreaming of something, and then when it happens, when we are at such a young age, it almost really does feel like we are creating that situation or
Yeah.
that scenario. I wonder how engaging or sensing your awareness of the void and also navigating questions around life and death at such a young age. How did these earlier experiences with the unseen kind of influence the anchor of the work that you do now?
I guess it was the realization that we really were more than our bodies and that our consciousness extends far beyond us. Because beyond those childhood experiences, like when I got to, I don't know, maybe like high school and college, and I had other experiences, they essentially they just like layered on more of these experiences that kind of confirmed that we're much more than our physical consciousness, and like that led me to really become interested in, what they call non-local consciousness. That urged me to sort of start reading about these experiences. That in itself, like the psychic aspect of it and those experiences, but also the whole concept of consciousness, it kind of underlies some of the work I do right now, or most of the work, because I like to help others tap into that same guidance that I've found helpful in my life.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you got back to this work after, all these things that you experienced early on in your life that may have felt traumatic. But I'm curious, at which point did you begin to reclaim back those gifts and these,
Mm.
like, reconnect back to these intuitive gifts after trying to block them from your early experiences?
I would say it wasn't until maybe later in college, because I would I found myself in, okay, I'll share a story. This was actually in high school before I got to college. I had a classmate that was cutting, and I sort of like learned to do the same thing, learned um, to cope with whatever I was going through. And what happened was my sister, who at that point was working in the psychology department of a university, not where I was. I was in a different school altogether. I was in high school. She approached me because the director of that department, he was a Jesuit priest, but he happened to be psychic, very psychic. And after this happened, that director came to her and said, "Tell your sister I'll give her a sharper razor." And my sister's like, "What?" And he said, "Look at her wrists." So my sister, I thought I was being sly. I was like hiding it in my with my watch, but she approached me and wanted to see it. And sure enough, it was what he had seen. And I didn't even know this guy, this priest. I didn't know him. She knew him because she worked in his department. So that started, I guess it sort of started me uh, diving back into this and exploring, well, how could he have seen that? And then they referred me, or I was asked to go see him, sort of like counseling. And in that counseling session, he guided me through this sort of like a meditation. Didn't know what it was then. My mom was in the US at the time, and I was in the Philippines. So he said, "Do you want to go see her, your mom?" I'm like, okay. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm here, she's all the way in the US. But I went along with it. So he guided me to this meditation, and I saw her vividly in the corner of a kitchen of my aunt's house where she was staying. I had never been there. I had never been to the US at the time. Um, and I just thought, okay, I'm making this up. The session ended. I waited for my sister. He sort of reported back to her and said, "She's fine. She'll be fine." Because I really wasn't trying to kill myself. It was just coping mechanism. But he, I told my sister what happened because she asked, "Oh, how did it go? What did you do?" And I explained what I saw, and I thought it was just, oh, I was making it up, but it turned out to be exactly what the kitchen looked like. So that, I think that was a catalyst also in me starting to, well, hey, there's more to this. Let me let me explore this. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
That's amazing. And after that experience, did you, as a child or during that time, did you have more experiences that kind of confirmed this gift that you have?
I had different experiences. Like some of it was maybe not all in dreams, but uh, a lot in the dream state. But I also, honestly, and I do not recommend this, but in college, my friends and I started playing with the Ouija board in junior year. Then we had a scary experience, and I like swore off of it. Yeah, do not recommend. Um, I was trying to understand things and explore things through those means, but most of my, I would say my energy was focused on, the fun things of being someone in college and being with your friends. So I didn't really devote myself to understanding more about that until I was in my 20s.
Carla, you were in healthcare. What ultimately kind of guided you to leave that space to fully commit or devote yourself into this path and this work?
When I moved here from the Philippines, I started working, and it was in an optical shop, and then I ended up doing medical billing. So it was very much office related work within the healthcare industry. And it's one of those things where you find yourself in that situation and then you become comfortable and then you're making good money and then you just keep going, even if you hadn't really planned to climb the corporate ladder. Sometimes you find yourself in that situation. So that's what I found myself in. But really, throughout that whole time, there was this, I guess, like deep knowing within me, even if I didn't really understand it, that I wasn't where I was supposed to be in terms of what I was doing with my life. It just felt like I was supposed to be doing something else, but I really didn't know what that was. And I figured, okay, what am I passionate about? That's what I'll pursue. But I tried a couple times, and sometimes, practical matters would stop me from taking a job because, it wasn't the salary that I needed. So it's lasted a while. And really, honestly, it started feeling like I was diverging more and more from what would be my path, even though I really didn't know where that was supposed to take me. Looking back, especially when I was writing my book, I realized I was sending mixed messages to the universe. And what led me to leave that job was the decision to write my book. And the pieces fell into place so almost magically. I was divinely guided to this life coach that I wasn't really even looking for. It just like stumbled on a free webinar that I listened to in the parking lot of my daughter's high school while waiting for her. And just things just lined up, and she helped me sort of like forge a clear path. My challenge at the time was that I had so many interests, and I think that's why I was sending out confused energy. So my reason for leaving my job wasn't really to be an energy healer. I had no intentions of becoming an energy healer. I left to write my book. But during that time, as I was leaving, I was introduced to Reiki. And again, also divinely guided. And that really supported me as I was leaping into this unknown, scary leap of faith, leaving a comfortable job and starting my own business.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Carla. What was it that inspired you to write the book, or did it feel like the energy of the book was already within you and just wanting to birth out into the world through you?
So the funny thing about that book is well, it's not a memoir, but it's almost like a part teaching memoir, I guess, but it's really a collection of all these different experiences, some of which we've talked about today, like all these what you some would see as paranormal, experiences throughout my life that all connect in some ways, but like underpinning all that is what's tied to the title of my book, Vade Mecum, which is, I guess if you're advising somebody who's about to publish a book, you wouldn't really advice that they use such an obscure term, but it's very much related to what I wrote about because that's a Latin term that mysteriously appeared in my life three times through a very good friend of mine. Who one day asked me about it, if I was familiar with it. And I said, no, what does that mean? And she told me about a couple of experiences, like interesting, strange, I suppose, experiences in her life. And that day that she told me about it, it showed up in my word of the day. So I'm like, what's going on? We had never heard this word before. So there's a lot more to the story, but that experience with the word of the day, it showed up two more times, and each time was like 8 years apart. So as I started to write my book, it dawned on me, I think I'm supposed to share this story. Um, because when that was happening, like I really couldn't explain it, neither could my friend. Looking back, I think that was meant to like help wake me up some more and like push me towards this path, which it did, I guess.
Wow. It's so guided, isn't it? It's like, it's just so interesting
Yes.
how everything just kind of, you're just being given these things to follow. How were the earlier parts of this path like for you?
It's interesting because when you say like we're always guided, that became so crystal clear during that time. I was, I set off to write my book, and then I would get these signs, and then a big transition point also, or not transition point, but I guess a hurdle that was also very significant in my journey was just barely 2 months into my retirement from my job. I finally went to my OBGYN because I was one of those who was just, I would get so involved in my work and I would put off my appointments, I would delay them, and I was long overdue for that. So I went to see her. I'm like, okay, well, now I have no excuse because I've got a lot of time on my hands. So I went to see her, and immediately there was a problem. Like she picked up on it, and she sent me to radiology, and then they found two large ovarian masses, one in each ovary. So I remember she called me as soon as she got the results of the MRI or CT scan, whatever it was. And she was telling me, I'm referring you to an oncologist. You need to go see them, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like super calm about it. Like, I don't know, it's a strange feeling, but I found myself in that situation in different times. I was walking to meet a friend of mine for afternoon tea. Anyway, so I was referred to an oncologist and they scheduled me for surgery. I guess the type of cysts that they were the masses. One of them was fluid filled. So they couldn't do a biopsy because if they did, then and they had cancer cells that would spread. So they scheduled me almost a month away. It was in March for my surgery, and at that time, obviously, I wasn't working a full-time job anymore. I was home alone. My husband was at work. My daughter was at school, and there would be I mean, my energy and my mindset was good. I was positive. I scheduled another Reiki session to help me with that, move through that. And I had so many messages from that Reiki session, but also just around me. Just all these signs, just assuring me it would be okay.
Would you say that this experience with the cysts supported the deepening of the path that you've chosen?
Yeah, that's a great question because it did. Because during that time, I mean, like it could very well have put me in this place of, despair or depression because I had like almost, if not a month left to wait until my surgery. And there was a time where suddenly I was thinking, what if the prognosis isn't good? Maybe I should call my friends. So I called, I was about to, or that was the thought process in my mind. And then as soon as I thought that, I had another sign show up. Um, so throughout this whole journey dealing with that, I was being guided again. The whole time I was receiving signs and messages that sort of kept me in a state where, I was grounded and not worried. And I realized like all this happening was was really just going to be part of my story.
So with that, like how do you feel like your work in being a multidimensional guide or doing multidimensional energy work began?
I believe it was when I realized that Reiki really supported me through those two big changes, leaving my job, starting a business, and going through the health scare. So after I realized how helpful it was to me, I became curious. I'm like, well, I think I want to learn more about this. It's been helpful to me. So I took certification courses in Reiki. I ended up with my Reiki Master certification through my now good friend, the same teacher I had for all levels of Reiki. And I suppose what drove me was I saw how beneficial it was to me and how it can help others, but also just the knowing, the trust that we're always guided. What I wrote about in my book, that all sort of like cemented the understanding and the trust that we're never alone, we're guided. And that's what really encouraged me to help others who may be navigating the same thing or something similar, or who are not aware that really everybody is supported.
I love that so much. Thank you, Carla. How do you personally define space holding in the context of your private sessions, your healing sessions?
With me, I not that I tap into people's energies before their sessions, but I prepare for them beforehand. Part of that is ensuring that I maintain a clear channel. I don't like the cookie cutter approach, so I have what I call my quantum toolkit or multidimensional toolkit, and what it is really is the different modalities that I've acquired, because I'm also continuing to learn and add to my toolkit. So when I hold space for others, I basically try to tailor each session to what they need at the time. We have a discussion before the actual session starts, and we do a debrief after. And even my clients will tell me each session is different, and they love that because it's based on what they're moving through, the energy, and what their guides want to bring through. And also, part of that is ensuring that I'm not only clear as a conduit, but also coming from, pure intentions.
I love that it's not a one size fits all approach because it never really is. And
Yeah.
yes, yeah, pure intention and being a clear channel is so important, especially, I mean, in general, but also especially to this work of service and energy work. Because I feel like it's so easy for people to fall into that ego trap or service to self. So, how do you stay attuned to having very strong discernment during a session or through your work?
It's interesting because along with each session being different, I never know either exactly what's going to happen. So to stay grounded, I try to focus on the fact that I'm there for that person. So if I have, let's say, an experience or a vision during that session as it's happening, sometimes as it's happening, I will question, and I also quickly think, okay, am I seeing this because of something I experienced? Like, are my filters basically causing me to see this information? But what often, if not always, happens is at the end of the session, there's that confirmation when we're doing a debrief. I'm like, oh, that's why I saw that, or I'll thank the other person for sharing what came up for them during the session. That really confirms what I was seeing, which sometimes is kind of wild.
From your experience, what are some important qualities or states of being for a space holder to cultivate and grow through their work?
I think that coming from purity of heart includes like not judging what that person is going through, because it's really not our place. If we're holding space for them, then we should allow them that space to heal and to grow. And of course, those are important qualities. And actually, when I first started out as a healer, I thought that that's what space holding meant. It's evolved since then, but I think that being grounded in that unconditional love and just remembering about unity consciousness, that we're really all connected. Even if I am holding space for another person, we share that divinity in us. It's that whole namaste, right? I mean, people throw that term around, but really it's like recognizing the divine in the other person and acknowledging that.
So I was wondering on the same thread of having autonomy and sovereignty, I feel that having known you for a little while now, it's very, very
Yeah.
sacred in your practice. Are you able to share how you maintain sacred or energetic boundaries, especially when you're navigating through really intense multidimensional experiences?
Yeah, sovereignty to me is very important. Like, I never, whether I'm teaching a class or holding space in person or doing a reading, I never want to overstep that, but also because I don't want the other person to feel disempowered. Like, empowering others is super important to me. So, in terms of maintaining boundaries, I have my own energetic hygiene, and I always, during a reading, if I sense like energy in a person's field that I feel doesn't serve them, I will ask permission before I move it away. And I explained this also to them in the beginning. There's also disconnection protocols that I make sure I go through at the end of it so that our energies are not entangled. An example of one of those experiences where I had to even be mindful of my own sovereignty. I was holding space in person for it was a new client, and an ancestor came through. I saw this ancient elder on the left, and I kept hearing curandera. So if you're familiar with the term. So I got that this ancestral guide was there to help this person. But at one point in the sessions, she started to come behind me, like she wanted to integrate with me, my body, to help the client. And that to me was like, oh no, that's a boundary you're not crossing. So I told her, no, you can help her from right there. I do not give you permission to integrate. So that's an example where when you're working with multidimensionality, and it's not necessarily something to be afraid of, but there are boundaries, not just for in terms of you ensuring that the other person has maintains sovereignty and maintains agency, but it's also your own energetic boundaries.
I'm so excited about the next question. I wonder if you could share with us about dragons. How did dragons first come into your field? What's your relationship with them? What's their energies like? And also, what eventually led to the inspiration of creating your Dragon Mystery School?
Ah, so the dragons are so many people are fascinated by dragons. I did not really start paying close attention to them until 2020. And it all started with seeing Diana Cooper's dragon deck, and I was like drawn to it. And then in 2021, I was led to 2020. That was when I first started had a vision of a dragon. I was on vacation in Hawaii, but I was guided to create my Dragon Energy course in 2021, early 21. And I actually, I didn't feel I was qualified to do that because in my mind, well, I had just started reconnecting with you guys. Why am I going to teach a dragon course? It's like, I'm not worthy. But they were insistent, and they revealed more puzzle pieces that helped me kind of see why I was being asked to do this. And I'm the type that sometimes drags my feet because I want something to be perfect before launching it. And when I was in that sort of like loop, they actually worked through a friend of mine to like give me the little nudge. So that my Dragon Mystery School has evolved since that first Dragon Energy course. So there are other programs in there. But as I look back, especially now because I'm teaching like the third level in my Dragon Consciousness School, and it's so amazing how things are clearly divinely unfolding, things that you don't see right in when you're in it. Looking back, you're like, oh, that's why they had me roll this out first, and that's why this is happening. Like, it all makes logical sense even. So in terms of the energy of the dragons, they're so loving, and it's a different kind of love. I mean, every guide has a different signature, right? And I sense the dragon energy as different than the angels. It's unconditional love, but it's different. Dragon energy is so big, but I've seen many people like move to tears, and I have as well, when they connect with their dragons, especially their guardian dragons. And people are moved, and I've had students or clients come ask me, like, how are you not crying while this is happening? Because they're like bawling. And I'm like, I know, I've been there. I still feel that. They're such wonderful allies, and they're really, truly integral to our ascension path.
Are you able to share a little bit more about how dragon consciousness or dragon energy and presence makes such a potent ally for healing and empowerment?
When you think of dragon energy and when you work with the dragons, they don't play small. So there's a lot of that's why their energy is large. And they're also in service to source, like the primordial dragons are in service to source. If somebody were to ask them to do something that's not aligned, that's not, and they're asking not out of purity of heart, they're just not going to respond. That's what I teach my students. But because of that large energy that is very potent, it can be very potent. Awakening dragon consciousness and integrating that empowers you to work through any life circumstances that you have. But it always comes down to that purity of heart. I remember when I was first building my dragon energy course, and I was concerned about something, I forget what it was now, but they were saying, no, that's control. So they would guide me out of and remind me about how I'm supposed to roll things out and not really control who I teach, or whether somebody is ready or not. And I found that, yes, indeed, that's what happens. When they're ready, they will appear. They'll connect with them.
Thank you. Could you share a story, whether it's a personal story or a story of a student maybe that you've witnessed, of whether it's a breakthrough or transformation through either your Dragon Mystery School or the Consciousness Expansion School?
I have a student who, when she first found me, which is also, as always, divinely orchestrated, she was very new to this world, and she didn't think that her clairets were active. And now she's so connected, she taps into science, but she's also tapped into clairets that surprised her. I remember in one of our consciousness expansion meetings or classes where her clair alien, she started smelling something tied to the journey. So things like that were pleasant surprises, I guess, new discoveries for the other person. And that's when the breakthroughs I love because I see how what they didn't think was within them, like a certain ability or a certain, being able to tap into certain guides and then realizing, oh, wait, I can. And we all have that ability.
It sounds very, very magical, Carla.
It
But
is magic.
yeah, it is. It is. We're all like, we all have this magic inside of us, and
Yes.
you're helping your clients reconnect with that, with their intuitive gifts. So, how do you actually, it's so easy, I feel, for us to get lost in the mysticism and the magic of it all. So, are you able to bridge the two, merge the two, and teach your students or guide your clients to lean into mysticism as well as staying grounded?
Yeah, it is magic. And I tell my students, you are magic. We're all magic. We have that. And it can be fun. It can be exciting. But really, as you said, grounding is important because we're in our physical bodies. We're in a human experience. We're not meant to be floating up in the ethers all the time. And unfortunately, I've also witnessed how people who operate in that kind of space all the time without enough grounding, they can be exposed to, ego or distortion. So whenever I teach, whether it's in my dragon school or my consciousness expansion school, or even when I hold space for others, I like to kind of anchor it in a real life experience. What happens oftentimes is I will share a story that kind of mirrors it to kind of help cement it for them. So, as empowering and as fun, I'll use the word fun because it can be fun, and experiences. It's not something that is going to be supportive for us unless we integrate that. Integration time is very important, and it's like a wave. And even my guides advised me about this early on. It's like the ebb and flow. You just got to flow with that. Um, which means allowing time to integrate what you're working with, integrating the mystical with the physical.
Thank you, Carla. When I think about dragons or connect with the energy of dragons, I just feel so much power. And I
Yes.
wonder whether there has ever been a time where this immensity of the power has ever been overwhelming for students who are coming in contact with dragons for the first time.
Yeah, I've had students, not a lot, but some who have decided to step away because, for whether it's for a limited period until they're ready to come back, because it can be overwhelming. And if they're not fully ready for it, you need that time to integrate. And it's not a form of judgment. There's really no place for judgment with that because we're all on our own timeline. And if you have shadow work, which is really important, then you got to do that. So my containers are typically smaller because it's like very specific people that are guided to me when it comes to that. And I've seen people, unfortunately, I've had a couple instances where they weren't ready and they're like backing off, which is fine. I mean, like I said, no judgment.
Absolutely. Everyone goes through their own process. And I think it's really great that you're able to honor that. And if you were to give advice or guidance for someone who feels called to be a space holder or an energy healer, but is still navigating around like certain fears or uncertainty, what would that be?
Humility being important includes being a lifelong student. And I know it may sound cliche, but really we're here, a lot of our human experience is about learning, right? And expanding. So when we come from the place of understanding that we're always learning, and at some points we are the teacher, at some points we're the student, then I think that helps us stay grounded and not thinking that, oh, I'm above learning from other people or learning from, even if it's through books. But, we're always here to either teach or learn and also heal our own shadows. That's why, some people think that shadow work is one and done. It's not. I mean, we're always, it's a cycle. It's like peeling an onion also, there's the once sometimes you think you're done and you've dealt with that, and then, oh, no, here's another thing. And it's not a bad thing because each time we go through that, we're expanding more and we're expanding our capacity to hold more light, to hold more frequency. And especially if you're a space holder, that's important because I really think we can only hold space for others at the level or at the frequency that we're willing to rise to ourselves. So I'm like, keep learning, keep studying. Of course, use discernment, which is super important, but it's it's easier to keep the ego in check when we're always understanding that we're here to learn.
Such words of wisdom. I resonate so much with it. Speaking of discernment, how do you personally, especially when you first started on your journey and then now with time and experience, how do you personally discern between the messages from higher consciousness, from spirit, from source, from dragons, and then messages from ego or projections from our shadows? And how do you teach students who are beginning their journey to do the same?
That's why I keep also talking about like the purity of intention and going within. I will say that, by nature, my personality was never really about feelings. I've been a very logical person who even many times in my life shunned feelings. I'm like, oh, like I would not let people see me cry, that kind of thing. But through this work, just being in this space, doing this work, it's taught me to really recognize the value and the importance of our heart and our feeling and sensing in our body. And it's changed how I receive information. So in terms of discernment, I sense it within and in my body. That is my guide. So rather than being in my mind and trying to make sense of it, solely from that point of view, I ask myself, and this is what I teach my students, like, how does this feel in your body? That will help guide you in discerning. It's the same thing when I receive messages. And I taught my students this also when I was teaching them about their clairs. Don't hesitate to question. the guidance you're receiving. Like I've questioned some of my guides because you're never supposed to put them on a pedestal. And even they will tell you that. If your guide is really truly of service to others and of the light, they're never going to make you feel that way anyway.
Yeah, they're our allies. They're here to like walk
Yes.
with us and along amongst us. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you so much
Oh,
for sharing yourself, for sharing your work. Before we close, we were wondering if it's okay for you to maybe share an oracle or a message from the dragons for the collective
mm,
this time.
for the collective. Okay. Let me tune in. Oh, okay. Okay. This is a mother dragon that I've connected with before. I haven't talked to her in a while. Um, I know it's a mother dragon because she's like built differently, like with a big belly. Um, ooh, okay. She's bringing through what she calls her youngling or her children, but like these are youngling dragons. What's coming forward right now is almost like the encouragement, a loving encouragement to awaken to that dragon consciousness, that dragon, and not just the energy, but it's really truly that consciousness of your connection, not only to others around you, but to your guides and to those who are coming forward at this time in humanity's expansion of consciousness. They are here as allies and they are here to not only assist in your ascension journey, but to also learn from each of you. And I'm seeing, they're just showing me this image of like almost like a flowing in of a lot of these. They look to me like rainbow dragons and just like new frequencies that are coming onto Gaia. So it's really more of an encouragement to, I wouldn't say value. That's not the exact word they want to use, but to they're showing me a flame, like spark the dragon consciousness in each of you because you each hold that fire within your belly is what they're showing. And I'm seeing this flame that grows once you step into this partnership with the dragons and your other guides. You step forward into a role that assists humanity at large, whether or not you recognize that. All right, that seems to be the end of that transmission.
Thank
I hope that
you.
was helpful.
It
Yeah.
was. Thank you so much. And I just
I get really,
wonder
really
if,
warm when the dragons
Me
come.
too. I
yeah,
Sorry.
started
I know.
feeling
I was
warmth
feeling
from.
it. I wonder if we could write off that if there might be a little like language offering or activation to kind of work with the fire in the belly to stoke it
Mm,
or to spark it.
sure. Okay, let me see. This one's not the mother dragon coming forward. This is my this is my guardian dragon. So this is where I get emotional is when they come forward. My guardian dragon's like this ancient guide that is sometimes exhausted because he's always with me on the astral. Jobaharakia tuntuku arakia nyashtiharakira ko urohatea. He is showing me that flame in the belly. He's actually infusing it with like blue flame, and it almost like encases it also on the outside perimeter of the flame. Jut ara uroka nahrekia stuku rehira arakia roturo. And I see it like rising up your pillar of light because it's very concentrated, and I see that rising. I see it like coming out of people's throat chakras. Speak aratakia ustur your truth naharaya dear ones. Ria atishtika niaratia. Speak your truth, but ground that in your hearts. The garakia tukustuntia. And many of you will find that the dragons will bring to you that courage, that power to speak despite your fears of your human thoughts and minds. Jorati, allow the space to riatia ek ar ustum akia, express your soul in its fullest capacity, for you, dear ones, are here to work rak ansht uk or akyate together, always in truth and in divine source, love and shok atya ura consciousness. Riashtu niakhirata tiashtu kwa. He keeps showing me like this flame that now has blue in it, just like it just keeps going up people's pillar of consciousness, because it's like a concentrated or like a narrower flow up your columns. I am complete. Whew. I'm sweating.
Wow. I felt that in my whole body. Thank you so much, Carla, for such a beautiful message, and thank you to your dragon guides as well for bringing that through.
Thank you.
What a way for us to end. But before we officially close this, would you be able to please share where our listeners can find you?
It's just ascensionwisdominstitute.com, all one word. And that's where they can find information about any of my offerings or even my book.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carla. Thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Yeah.
been such an honor to chat with you guys. I've loved it. So thank you for having me on your podcast.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
And thanking our listeners for tuning in, and we'll see you in our next episode.